you have recently opened your EufyMake UV printer, you have probably noticed one thing, and that is that ink disappears far too quickly. And unfortunately, most EufyMake UV printer owners that are new all are asking the same question. Is this printer supposed to be taking that much ink? And the answer is no, it's actually not even the printer's fault. Chances are it's probably the settings that you're choosing and also the artwork that you're using. There is a bunch of different factors of why your EufyMake is sucking up so much ink. So today I've compiled 10 things that you need to look out for while you're doing your prints, because let's face it, ink right now is a hot commodity and really hard to get your hands on. Let me give you 10 tips on how to save some ink for your printer. The one thing that I want to remind everyone is these print cartridges are 100 milliliters per ink cartridge. Now, one of the best selling factors with the EufyMake UV printer is the fact that it can print 3D-like textures, like these two things right here. The end results look absolutely amazing, and it really does look like real art. But the unfortunate part about this is you actually consume a fair amount of white and gloss ink when you're doing 3D texture like prints. So if you're out of the gate trying to save on your ink consumption, what I would tell you is limit the amount of 3D texture printing that you are doing. Now, the reason why it actually soaks up so much white and gloss is because it has to build the layers inside the print. So I don't know if it's going to, there it goes. Come on. All right, so in the actual print right here, you are gonna see this stark white that happens. That's the layers. You're gonna see this like grayish white and then the stark white. That is going to be all the white ink that needed to get printed in order to create a texture like this. Now, the reason why it also consumes a lot of gloss is that it actually throws on a pretty decent amount of layer of gloss over the top of your color just to give it that shine and that gloss. There is unfortunately no way that you can just not do the gloss. So if you're like, well, I only want to do the white and color, what about the gloss? Unfortunately, there is not a way to do just the white and color, but the amount of white that is used is a lot. Now, things that you can do to avoid if you are like, I really want to do a 3D print, don't do the thickest settings, okay? You're going to want to do the thinnest amount. 1 millimeter is probably thick enough for you. This right here, I believe, was 5, super thick, used a lot of ink, also takes a lot of time. But we're here about talking about ink usage today. One thing to remember here is I put up that same design of this daisy coaster onto the software just so you can see it, that this one coaster that is not that big, a whopping 4 inches large, would take a total of 9.7, so almost 10 milliliters of ink in total in order to just print one coaster. That means you'd probably only be able to get 10 of these coasters printed before you ran out of one ink cartridge. Remember, each ink cartridge is 100 milliliters. So if you're looking to conserve on ink, the last thing you want to do is do ultra thick prints like this, because you're going to be wasting a ton of ink. I want to remind you to always look over here on the right-hand side where it says estimated ink volume. This is very important. The great part about the software now is that it actually tells you how much ink you probably are going to end up using. So if you're like, whoa, that is way too much, what you can do is just press the cancel button. Now let's time out here and let's look at the actual numbers in the breakdown. You can see how we have not a whole lot of all the other inks that are being used, but pretty much 5 milliliters of white and gloss equally, 10 milliliters of each. Meaning, if you are running low on white ink, do you see how much milliliters are just being used on just white? You want to make sure that we conserve on ink, okay? So if you're running low on white, the last thing you want to do is print a whole bunch of white. I am just going to cancel because I don't want to print this and waste that much ink. Now, since we're on the subject of white ink consumption, let's talk about whether or not you actually have to use all colors all the time. And the answer is no, you don't. If you are using white-based products, basics, like a white canvas, some white Legos, or even this vase, you would not actually have to use white at all if you didn't want to. That is one of the greatest parts about the Eufy printer, is that you can actually customize your print settings to conserve on your ink. Let's say that I wanted to print this PNG file, okay? You can see over here in the ink mode, if you click on it, right now I am printing white and then CMYK. If I was printing on this PNG file onto this canvas, I actually don't even need a layer of white because my white is already here. What you could do is just do a layer of CMYK. Now let's look at the differences between this ink consumption and the one with white and CMYK. I'm just going to press print. This right here is a total of 90 millimeters high. So obviously the bigger the print, the more ink it's going to consume. But we'll do an apples to apples for just this print right here. 90 millimeters high, just CMYK, would consume 0.02 milliliters, okay? 0.02, remember that. We are going to cancel, and let's do the white CMYK and press print. Now, unfortunately, every single time that you exit out and re-go in, it does take a little bit of time, but I would much rather you save on ink than wasting on your time. Now, instead of 0.02, we then went from 0.31. So like 0.3 milliliters more. Now, the grand scheme of things, 0.3 milliliters isn't that much, but again, this is a 90 millimeter high piece of artwork that is like yay big. Now, take that in comparison to making something really large. The amount of ink that you would use between one with just CMYK and then the other one with white and then CMYK is a huge difference. Now, if you wanted to do white CMYK and gloss, which is going to be this one right here, if you press print, we went from 0.02 to 0.31 to 0.48. So 0.02 for just CMYK, 0.31 for white and CMYK, add in the gloss, and it's 0.48. That is a lot of ink that you're going to be consuming. So definitely be mindful of this right here as you move forward in learning your new printer. Now, since we're on the subject of print settings, the one thing that I would love to mention here is going to be when you're dabbling around with the different print settings, you can see down here that we can actually adjust how many layers of white, CMYK, or gloss that you're using. Now, I will like to pause here, okay? Because when you are printing on wood, wood is a very porous-like object. So when you're printing on wood, you're going to notice that on the wood setting that you actually use a ton of layers of white. The reason for that is the wood, because it's porous, is going to soak in that white resin. Now, if you wanted to say, you know what, I do want to print on this and I don't want to use the amount of white that they are saying that I need, chances are that if you were to only do a single layer of white with the color on there, your color is going to come through because the white is going to get soaked in. Now, to combat that, let's say you don't actually want to have a weird looking piece, what you could do is just paint your wood, your natural wood, with some primer. Prep it first and then put it into your printer, and then you wouldn't even actually have to use white. You could use just CMYK. That is just a little tip that you can do for wood or actually anything that's porous. But going back over here into the software, if you were to just come over here into unknown material and wood, if we select that, you're going to see that now we have 6 layers. If we do white and CMYK, you can see that we have 6 layers. So it will tell it to print 6 layers of white, okay? So if you were to do metal, selecting your thing. We again have 6. If you do ceramic, it only has 5. So obviously pay attention to how many layers things are getting printed. You can choose more layers. Again, more layers equals more ink. Another thing that you can definitely do to save on ink consumption is coming down here into quality. If you print on high quality, what's going to happen is your print is going to actually look wonderfully professionally made. Unfortunately, it's going to consume more ink. Obviously, when we go down from high quality down to standard or even draft, the quality of your actual print itself is going to suffer a little bit. But if you were like, I want to really conserve on ink, I am not 100% sure that I even am going to finish liking this project or whatnot, what I would strongly suggest is you use the draft setting. Now, I will have to tell you, when you print on draft, it is not going to be quality. I personally always print at least on standard, unless I'm doing the 3D light prints, then I do high quality. But for the most part, I only do standard. Again, if you're looking to save on ink consumption, do draft, but just know that when you do draft, your print quality is going to suffer just a little bit. One thing to keep in mind when you're creating your files is that your file types actually matter when it comes to ink consumption. On the right is going to be an SVG file that I've uploaded into the EufyMake Studio software. And on the left is going to be a pretty similar PNG file that is like the Christmas tree that's over here on the right. Now, the SVG file over on the right is actually going to consume far less ink than the one over there on the left. And the reason for that is there is going to be a lot less color dots and tiny color variations over on the SVG file side versus the PNG file. The prints are going to be a lot cleaner over there on the right, but it is going to end up looking like a clip art versus the one on the left, which is like an actual Christmas tree look. Obviously, these are going to give you two very different results in printing. However, if you are looking to save on ink consumption, obviously stay over on the right-hand side when it comes to the SVG files versus the left. Another way to conserve on ink consumption is going to be cropping your image to your actual item that you are going to be printing on. Let's say that I wanted to print this onto one of these magnets. Obviously, you could see that I am going to have a ton of overspray, or if I make the width the same width as the magnet, that I'm going to have a lot of white left over. I don't want that. I want to be able to print on top of that magnet. So if I were to make and fill up this entire magnet, you will see by bumping down the transparency that I am technically going to have a lot of overspray. Overspray is going to be wasted ink because it's going to go on the mat and not on my magnet. So how to combat overspray or wasted ink is by cropping. What you can do is let me zoom in. You can do a few different options. You can double click on the image and crop it like this. And then press return. And now your image is going to be very tight to your actual magnet. Or the other option to this is you can come up here into the crop tool and you can free crop. You can crop as a square, rectangle, another rectangle. You can do a circle, a triangle, a star, and heart. Now, eventually, I do hope, I know Eufy watches these videos that I post, so I do hope I am talking to you, Eufy, that you actually allow us to maybe do a pen line where we can actually just freehand, because there are some things like maybe even this that isn't necessarily a full shaped heart that I would love to be able to just pen draw around my shape so I can be able to crop it the way that I want to. That would be really cool. But for right now, you can crop it these different ways, or again, if you do free, it's the same as double clicking and maneuvering. I'm not going to be able to like curve these corners or anything like that. But that is just a way to combat the overspray, which is definitely a way to conserve on ink. All right, the last and final tip that I can give you that will help save on ink consumption is do not turn this machine off. Just leave it plugged in. Let it go into its moistening mode. Let it just do its cleaning cycles. I know that it's painful to have to do its cleaning cycles and to do its routine maintenance, but that's what the best part about this machine is that routine maintenance. Fun fact, which may not actually be fun, is that when you shut this machine down all the way, like we turn this green button right here, hold it down, and put it in a shutdown mode, it goes into a deep moistening state, which actually wastes a lot of ink. Then, when you have to restart it and reboot it, you have to turn the machine on, and guess what? It's going to do the exact same process all over again, wasting more ink. So if it were me, and this is exactly what I do not turn this puppy off ever. I keep it on, just tuck it in to the side, and let it do its routine maintenance. A lot of people ask me if that uses a ton of the cleaning cartridge or even the ink. Friends, I have had this machine for over a year. I have printed a lot. You would be surprised on how many ink cartridges I have not used. Maybe 5 in a year. It's not that much. The cartridges and the inks, they really don't consume that much in the cleaning cycle. I know that people like to weigh it and stuff like that. I am not someone who is that deep into the science of this all, but just for somebody that has been a user of this, pretty heavy user for over the last year, I can tell you that just leaving it plugged in will consume far less ink than if you were to shut it completely down and turn it back on, let's say in 2 weeks when you want to use it. All right, y'all, I sure hope that all of these ink consumption tips were very helpful. If you are a EufyMake UV printer owner and you have also discovered any type of really cool ink saving hacks, please leave them in the comments of this video because we want to help the entire community out. Make sure and save your pennies on the ink purchasing and being able to buy more blanks so you can print. I hope I inspired you to create, and I'll see you later.